Good morning. You had a presentation in English. You'll have this presentation in a combination of Spanish and Portuguese. I advise you to get your headphones. If there are doubts, you can please interrupt me if there are doubts.
Es presentar.
Basically, what we're going to do is to present the results of a research to you that Gartner conducted. Gartner was a research company, research in technology. We worked with experts constantly doing research, some 700 different technologies and the application of these technologies to the several industries. We may refer to the vertical technologies and industries as something horizontal. In particular, I work with government and the private sector, but in Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, and Chile, I basically work with governments, with the government. I'm an advisor, not a consultant, but providing advice. I don't know, I'm not sure about my Spanish. Advisory. Both for executives in the IT area and also people who are responsible for business areas. That's the Gartner role, and this is the content that I will present to you. Well, one of the things that I will use is the following term. I start talking and I never stop, so I need this. I need to time me. I need to set an alarm. A term we will use extensively, and I'd like to define it to start with. I'll try to make sure that we understand the same. Digital business. This concept is being used, this term is being used in a wide semantic area, both in the private and the public sector. Basically, let us start with this perspective of network architecture, whose aim was to have several points to be linked in an independent way. That was a military project during the Cold War. From then on, there was a wider and popular use of these, and access to this technology was larger, and this is, we know, as a part of our lives, an essential one, which is the internet. We basically used the internet to chat with people, to search for information through several mechanisms, search engines and tools. Companies would have had a vision that this could represent the possibility of e-business through this network by using, basically through transactions between people, companies, doing some kind of trade. This is the e-commerce term arises. The natural evolution of the internet arose when a third component entered the scenario, which is things. This is things. This concept, it's everything. It can be anything, but the representation of a simple explanation are our smartphones and tablets. Things are basically sensors, videos, cars, but in the wider representation, it's interesting to refer to our smartphones, that it's a number, a smartphone. What the least that we use it for is to make calls. We have pictures, we have sensors, a wide range of, I don't know, there's no word for sensors. Do you know Alcatel? I will use an OKT of sensors that are in a tablet or sensor or smartphone. This enables the construction of services and products that people, us, may get by using the device. The things, in fact, had this dramatic growth in the last years, and the relations in the network in 2009, 1.6 billion in 2009, number of devices we're speaking, and we have 900 billion of things interconnected by the internet, sending and receiving information. This is one of our calculations and estimations for 2018. We will be getting to these figures. So the relationship between things and people changed on the internet. In 2018, 2019, 30 billion things are being received and sent, and working with information on the internet with 30 billion people. From the general perspective for all industries, this represents a great opportunity. I'm not talking from the technological perspective, but mainly from the perspective of a chance for changing the way in which services and products are offered. When we speak about the government, it might happen that this chance is even wider and sensitive than the private initiative, because basically a private initiative aims, if we make it simple, in a way to have money behind as a compensation, but the government is mainly concerned about offering the best services to citizens by means of process practice that effectively imply some kind of value to the main client, in between inverted commas. In this case, it's citizen. And this is the chance, the opportunity where the government can develop services by using the digital concept of the citizen moment, OCC moment. This is certain moments in everybody's life where some kind of service should be rendered by the government to make our lives easier. There's three real examples here that already occur in Australia, England, and Canada. Basically, these are products or services that were developed. The first one of them, it's a person who has a recollocation or looking for a job within 30 minutes after he retired. Through a number of data that is processed in this reallocation that the government of the city of Sydney in Australia makes it available in an automatic way for all companies which reside in their city. There's a description. I may share this presentation with you later. Basically, it's a number of processing intelligence as from a citizen momentum. It executes a number of responsibilities. Second example is in England, in London specifically. It's a service for people who have some kind of difficulty and need to be monitored, and they need to be accompanied constantly. This is the case of a lady who has Alzheimer's, yes, Alzheimer's disorder, but it's a person, nobody can stay and look after her the whole time. So this service, this government's service, provides sensors and monitoring of this person that identifies any irregular behavior. And maybe the most interesting analysis of this case is the analysis of a different or abnormal behavior. This is done by an artificial intelligence device. In Canada, also, a service developed to identify disasters of great dimension, and it's considering a number of actions to avoid the increase of consequences. For instance, an accident with a train
que pueden afectar no solamente obviamente
with toxic substances that may affect the environment or the people through sensors and drones. The whole area is isolated. Certain members of the government are informed. There is a process which is started from a certain action. The point that I'd like to share with you, based on this research, it's this perspective that we have, maybe of what the government will be like by 2030. Starting from what we infer in this scenario, through the research that we conducted with the government. Based on this transformation process, the tendency for the governments around the world and what they are doing, the main idea is that government is not a business. It will never be a business. It should never be a business. In some countries, this is not exactly true, but there's a positive aspect in connection with these, that are the practices that the government or the civil servants are having to use good business practices. I don't like this term, neither in Spanish or in Portuguese. It doesn't have the same meaning that we know maybe in English. I prefer to use a synonym of business, not to use, it's to use capacities. This cannot be translated into English. We're talking about capabilities that the private sector has, practices, processes that the private sector and the government can also use in a successful way. The result of our last survey with the main technology executives, both in the government and in the area of government, has shown that a great deal of the private initiative and the government, there is a strong dedication in terms of their priorities or their priority in connection with some activity that we start some kind of service or product offer by using technology or the digital context. Through these charts, you can see that the behavior, the prioritization from the government, it's almost the same as the private initiative. 50%, 51%, some kind of digital transforming or digital use of mechanism. 28 or 30% already have an initiative or digital services, and they're trying to expand in 20 or 21%. This is an interesting figure because it is not that normal, this kind of adherence of the government to certain things, but 20% want to change almost all services and all of their applications and systems, these legacies, for something that is completely innovative and digital. We also have evidence for these from the same survey where the government, the priorities are placed on 4 items: digital transformation, security, safety and risk, governance, compliance and regulations, technology, initiative or improvements that can contribute to improving the service or the product. When we have this true drawn, or when we deepen on the same survey, we find the priorities in terms of technology: 19% cloud computing. I don't know if you're all familiar with this concept, but it basically means to have the entire infrastructure, private or public, in what we call a cloud, which is it is at some point that we don't know exactly, but this is shared, and these resources are shared with other companies and people, so this can be accessed from anywhere in the world. Basically, it constitutes a great obstacle in the government. The private initiative has had investments in connection with the transformation of the infrastructure in a cloud concept. The government, regarding safety, security, I always went a step back. But now, apparently, this obstacle has been overcome. There's a strong priority in connection with this topic. A further interesting issue is the government that has to do BI analytics, analysis and estimation based on data, infrastructure and data center. When we see what this information aims to, we're referring to federal ideas, state or regional. Could I have a glass of water? Could I have a glass to have some water, please? The glass hasn't been changed. No, it's not that it's nothing personal, but this is a new glass for you. Let us say cheers. Well, if he was not that healthy, that's not a problem then. From the general budget for technology in the government, the expansion, in a way, there's been a confirmation that the iCloud is there's a strong debate around this. iCloud as a technology is a component, an essential component when we speak about digital business. I can't say that it's not possible with a different architecture or infrastructure to offer business in a digital concept, but it turns out harder and more expensive. The same thing, it's the increase of investment in, and there's a comparison between the private and the public initiatives. This trend that we see when we ask the government, are you planning to introduce cut downs in your investments? Basically, 30% refers to a reduction in infrastructure and data center, the use of their own structure. The government sees there is a chance for optimizing processes. How do we work? I will develop the idea how we get to certain conclusions in terms of trends. Basically, we work with the concept of trends, macro trends. Basically, this is, we research at the university level by speaking with our clients and conducting research in several contexts and environments in general. These macro trends that we basically work with in drivers in social, economic, political, environmental, or technological changes. For us, a macro trend is something that changes in a gradual way, one or more than one of these drivers. So, our work is based on this vision, on the performance. This is what we consider a macro trend. Based on these macro trends, we define macro capacities. Based on these trends, what are the capabilities? This may be used for public or private initiatives. What skills, what trends the organization has from the influence of these macro trends. And based on these capabilities or these trends, business trends, what are the technology trends that respond to these business trends? What is important in this methodology or this perspective is to see that there is no technology per se. Technology is only logical if it is used to respond to a necessity to transform the society or the economy. There is no technological transformation per se or in itself. Based on this technology trends, as a consequence of the macro trends, we work with a curve where we identify where these technologies are from the point of view of how mature they are. This means how much, is it too early to use them? Is it risky if the people who use these are having some kind of disappointment? Or we have a certain point or time when it is mature enough to be adopted with low risks, the hype cycle. So this is what it looks like. We work at basically 4 mega trends. Macro trends are mainly 4. I'm not talking about technology. I'm speaking about macro trends. In a way, I change all the dimensions I referred to. We have identified the macro trends: social instability, in several parts where we can imagine. I'm not going to go into these. If you have doubts, you can ask me later. Perpetual austerity, the gradual increase in the use of financial resources as a constant concern of governments, sustainable systems, and when we speak about systems, it's information systems. We're speaking about the wider concept of systems and population agency. We feel that basically, based on these 4 macro trends, all of what is developed to be used as a transformation in the government will be in some way caused by one of these macro trends. When we work with the business trends, social instability is basically has to do with capacities that are necessary to work with safety and security in a sustainable way, and the responsibility with the society to develop products and services, the open civic space, leadership in areas or entities of the governments, in the digital transformation process in the society. Also, there's a strong strategic plan for digital transformation if the citizens do not have the chance to access this process. Community resilience, in a way, transparency of strategies and information with the entire society. I don't know exactly if we are talking about how far we are, at least from the ideological or the ideas that Orwell expressed in 1984, but he had no idea of what the possibility to monitor or measure things that the government, for the good or bad, when adopting the possibility that these business trends provide. When we speak about austerity, we speak about ecosystems. This means sharing information and processes and the automatization of processes in several divisions of the government. It's no technological feudus or for applications that are unique, to have horizontal applications, and mainly to offer the appropriate instruments so that they do not only execute their work, but also that with these instruments they can constantly innovate, suggesting new ways to render services and offering products. Sustainable ways, the government and their capacity in an agile way, to be more agile in what has to do with the needs of citizens in connection with these. And last, these population agency, in a way, they need to focus on the vision that who the users are, who the clients are of these applications or services that we are aiming to deliver. This may seem simple, but what I have here, I have the chance of observing in a general way. I don't know what it's like in Uruguay, but in a way, this is what happens in Brazil. Citizens are called taxpayers, or in a way, the word is contributors, those who taxpayers. So the word in Spanish is that they contribute. The first vision of these citizens by the government is that they contribute when they pay taxes. The relationship is not that a service is rendered and they pay for it, but somebody who collects the resources of those who contribute to something. This is the taxpayers in English. We may have a centralization, and this centralized vision, there's a few concepts or the way we see citizens. We need to change this. We no longer need to see them as those who contribute to them, but citizens. United States, it's not contributor, it's taxpayer in the States. That's the word. It's what the relationship of the government is with their citizens. It is not the social security number in the States. It's different. They are seen as a service renderer, those of you who have a social security number. In Brazil, the number that we identify, it's taxpayers' record. Well, excuse me for these. Let us start with the macro trends. Then we spoke about business trends, and now we are referring to, we were able to map these trends according to the technology vision. This is what can be basically the ones that will be used in the vision of complying the business trends and macro trends, the general trends. I'm not going to go into details, but we can basically group these technologies that allow us to have a single perspective, considering all clients, the collection of information in an organized way, and using this information and how they are compensated in a transparent way. Second, it's a possibility and the capability of the government to, in a very agile way, and there's a number of technologies for this purpose. I'd like to mention just two. The concept of bimodal shared services. This is the capacity of the government to develop certain concepts, processes, or services at different speeds depending on the needs or the demand, in a way. Basically, there's two souls in a single body. What do you call this? This need to. And third, we can group them sustainability. Basically, it has to do with working based on intelligence, artificial intelligence, real stupidity, analysis of information and data based on any point, and to use this information in an intelligent way. This is the case at the beginning of the presentation of that lady in London who had a number of observations, and these was read or was interpreted by an artificial intelligence who's assessing certain behaviors. Well, basically, how will these technology capabilities transform everything? First, the first three, multi-channel, citizens extensions are from any contact point, not only through their smartphone or their tablet. So the possibility that the government has to interact with citizens in using any channel, those that exist or those which will exist that we do not know today. Excuse me. This will obviously imply the chance of have a greater identification of citizens with the services of the government by creating a greater relationship. I don't know what it's like in Uruguay, but in Brazil there is no trust whatsoever as to the government or anything that is offered to us by the government. So this is just an example. I'm not speaking badly of my dear country. Some interesting applications, some unified application, a person or somebody that has the entire variety of possibilities centralized and in an intelligent way. A technology, I don't know if you've had contact with them, but we think that it's going to have an impact, and this has blockchain. This is a way of storing information in a very safe way and with a chance to trace this. Several governments and agencies are using and are conducting research as to how to use blockchain in their offer of services and products. If you have any question about this, you can ask me. I'm working with several government agencies. So, in terms of agility, the use of these technologies to offer services in a more agile way. It's not a matter of how long will it be valid. It's a change of mentality, an important one. There is a need now, and there is a citizen momentum now. So I'm going to offer to develop this citizen for this moment. If then I have to toss it, it doesn't matter. The objective was to see and to respond to a certain problem at a certain time. This obviously reflects several benefits to our society and mainly changing the vision of the citizen with regards to the government. It's agile, transparent, and reliable. Now, last, in a general way, the use of information in an intelligent way. I don't know the word in Spanish. Excuse me for using intelligence and intelligent. The government uses the information in an intelligent way so that with the information it has to define public policies and define specific services. And in the use of the artificial intelligence as an instrument to work with a great number of data, and based on this to provide inferences, estimations, prescriptions. There are several governments and agencies that also work in connection with this matter around the world and in Latin America. Well, basically, we have the chance of creating in more dynamic ways to offer product services in collaboration with them. The government in the UK detailed an interesting platform how to develop basic services for citizens who use these basic services to build new services. For instance, my passport, I need to get my passport, so there's a service, but I would need to get my ID and a copy of my marriage certificate. Those who provide this service, what they do is they combine these services and they offer this within the UK government platform. So the citizens themselves are creating new services based on basic services which are already available. This was the concept that I mentioned before, the hype cycle. Basically, it allows for you to have the vision of how mature technologies are, from considering the risk or also the time they have for it to be applied. And you can see in colors there's a representation in considering the number, the time, and the technology. We think that they're going to reach this productivity plateau once it is full. This has to do with engineering, and this is components, what I was referring to, this example in the UK, to bring and to build a number of services to enabling the creation of new services, and there's technology that makes this possible, and the hype cycle enables us to have the vision that it's a movement or not where we start investing in this business, in this capability. The same has to do with artificial intelligence. There are several technologies used but it's in a different stage of development. This is has to do with the wish to run the risk, and this is considering the benefit and also the political capital they will add to their card, if it's worth or not. This is faster. We usually use this presentation on Thursday. This is, imagine that tomorrow it's Monday. We suggest, considering these trends, we suggest to evaluate how these macro trends impact your agency's mission and goals. We're using these macro trends based on wider research and considering the Inter-American Development Bank, how to know the way in which these trends will impact the management or the administration of each one of the government's agencies, but mainly in the administration model and what their business trends are, what their trends are based on these macro trends in each one of the areas of government, and with regards to these, what am I going to do? What is the strategic perspective of this mega tendency? And obviously, specifically in our country. Also using an assessment process that will be used to develop mid and long-term planning to adopt these capabilities and the technology that can respond to these capabilities. Basically, here I share the documents that I used to prepare this presentation. As I said, Gartner is a research company, and it is all published in their site, gartner.com. Excuse me, I had 45 minutes, so sorry, excuse me for that. Thank you. If there's any doubts and you want to know about anything, here I am.